Hi everyone, I'm Melissa and I'd like to welcome you to an Alpha Software Skypecast. Today I have a very special guest joining me, Mr. Dan Bricklin, also known as the godfather of the spreadsheet. Thanks so much, Dan, for joining me.
My pleasure.
So Dan, you co-created VisiCalc spreadsheet program back in 1979, which basically fueled the explosion of the personal computing industry. Some say that you even helped create this industry by virtue of coming up with the first software platform that people were really willing to pay for in the masses. And you're still active today, innovating, and most recently with the release of the latest version of your iPad app, Note-Taker HD. But before we get into the interview, I want folks to know where they can go to get some more information about your iPad app, and also about yourself too. While we talk, they can look some stuff up. So Dan, where can they go while they're listening?
Well, for Note-Taker HD, it's really easy. You go to notetakerhd.com, Notetakerd.com. And to learn more about me, you can go to bricklin.com. That's Bricklin. It's Nancy.com. And I have a blog that you can see that's listed there. And lots of background material. I've been blogging and putting stuff on the web since blogging since 1999, putting things on the web since before that.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you so much. And so let's start at the beginning before we dive into Note-Taker HD. So Dan, can you talk a little bit about your career? I know you've accomplished a lot. So give us a quick rundown of what you've done.
Well, I started programming when I was in high school, which is back in the 60s and the 1960s. But in those days, we worked on punch cards and stuff like that. And I worked at University of Pennsylvania. Then I went to MIT, and there I worked on Multics, which is a time-sharing system that was the predecessor to Unix and now Linux, among other things. And a lot of the stuff that we know today came out of that project, and I worked on that. I was young. I was in my late teens and early 20s, and implemented APL twice, which is a language for doing computing. Then I went to Digital Equipment Corporation, worked on typesetting, and then on word processing. Worked on electronic cash registers with some small microcomputers, and then went to Harvard Business School, where I put a lot of that background together of computation, business from the business school, word processing, and came up with the idea for the electronic spreadsheet as we know them today. And with my friend Bob Frankston, we developed VisiCalc, and that was on the Apple II, and apparently helped get Apple going in business and gave people reasons to buy a personal computer. After that, I worked on a product called Dan Bricklin's demo program. It was for prototyping, which is very popular on the IBM PC. I've worked in pen computing. I've worked in the web area with a product called Trellix, both client-side and server-side, basically cloud-based authoring and stuff like that. And I have a JavaScript spreadsheet called VisiCalc that's sold by the social text people who have an enterprise social software. It's also on the One Laptop per Child as their spreadsheet on their XO computer. And most recently I've been doing iPhone and now iPad programming with first a little product called Note-Taker and now Note-Taker HD that takes the pen computing type stuff of being able to write on the screen and being able to do it in something appropriate for the hardware of the iPad.
Wow. It's pretty impressive, all the things you've accomplished. Now, so let's dive a little bit into Note-Taker HD. A couple weeks ago, you stopped by the Alpha Software offices to show us a little bit about it, and I read some of the reviews. They're all rave reviews on the iTunes App Store. It's amazing. Everyone loves it. So what does it do, and what inspired you to build an app like this?
Well, first of all, to see what it does, the best thing to do is to go to see the overview video. If you go to notetakerhd.com, at the bottom there's a link, or you can go to youtube.com/notetakerhd, and there's an overview video. But the basic idea is that you can write on the screen with your finger or with a compatible stylus. The iPad has a variety of styluses that you can use, such as here's one. This is one called the Pogo Sketch, but there are lots, and you basically can either, you can either use your finger to write on the screen, or you can use the stylus. But one of the cool things about, and you can zoom in and out and stuff like that. One of the cool things, though, with Note-Taker HD is that you can break it into two windows, and then if you, whatever you write down here in the big area shows up smaller at the top. So that basically you can write big because the iPad doesn't have the fine control that you'd expect with a, let's say with a real pencil or pen, but lets you write a little bigger and shrink it down so you can fit a lot of material on the page, and then organize those pages. You can take PDF files and put it behind and mark them up, and people use it for taking notes. Hundreds or thousands of pages of notes. Medical students use it for notes. Policemen use it for marking up reports and stuff like that. It's used for all sorts of cool things.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to play around with it a little bit, and it's so smooth, it's really intuitive, and it makes taking notes very easy, and it's great because it's on your iPad, it's very portable. Now, I mean, what made you do it for the iPad? Why?
Well, first of all, I was looking to do for the iPhone, or for smartphones. I started, the iPhone seemed to be the one that was most appropriate at the time I started for various reasons. And I just wanted to take little Post-it notes. Somebody would say, oh, give me a call, here's a telephone number, and I needed to write it down, scribble it down real fast, and typing it has its problems because you make mistakes. You say, hold on a second, backspace, backspace, backspace. For scribbling certain things down, you sort of wanted like a Post-it note. The problem with that, with a little phone, is you don't have the same problem with the high resolution. So I came up with an idea of writing big on top and shrinking it down and putting it small, what you wrote. So I wrote that, and that's Note-Taker, and did okay. But then I kept improving it with stuff. But then the iPad came out and said, okay, let's just run it on the iPad. Well, when you take the little app made to fit on this and put it on the iPad, it was horrible. It just was totally inappropriate. And there's a lot more room on the iPad to do more things. So I said, well, let's take the writing on top and move it to a separate space, and let's build an iPad app specifically for the iPad, starting from this iPhone app. And people liked it. And they would send me emails. I mean, I get emails, many of them every day. And, do this, please add that. And of course, I listen to them. And I'm adding this and I'm adding that. And I keep adding these features, and people like that. And I've just been improving it. The sales go up. And many very happy users. But now, of course, I owe those users improving it, continuing to add to it. So that's what I'm doing. So it came out of necessity was the mother of invention, and then just improving as I listened to customers. It's, I know it's kind of like with Alpha, because I was an old user of Alpha back when the days when I did that demo program back in the 80s. Yeah. I was the user of Alpha, the early versions of Alpha, to run my business. We were taking credit cards, and we had to do shipping and handle all sorts of stuff. All our order processing, me and Jennifer, was handled on Alpha. So that's been built listening to customers. The same thing happened in my case but I hear from them a lot, and a lot of users, and I get a lot of feedback. And of course, there's feedback on the Apple, the App Store.
Yeah. Well, it's wonderful that you listen to your fans. And another question that I had was, what were some of the challenges you ran into when building this app? Is there stuff that could be better about building apps for the iPad?
Well, those are two separate questions. Mm-hmm. One is, the challenges for me is to figuring out how to do the things, how to fit that onto the small screen and make it easy to learn to use. When I'm charging $5, $4.99 for the app, and I get $3.50 after Apple takes their piece. I can't spend a lot of money giving support to each person. So it has to be something that you can learn to use. And I have a lot of selective, exposure is slow. You start by seeing some obvious stuff, and then once you start saying, well, I probably need this, you'll see something that now you can do that, now you can do more, now you can do more. So that it took a lot of work, a lot of watching and people doing it. So there's a lot of challenge there. The big challenge is getting the performance at all the things. People expect a certain amount of performance. And when you want to take a whole page of notes, we're talking, if you look at notetakerhd.com, you'll see some samples. The one I just put up yesterday of really dense notes of some biochem notes somebody took. Fitting all that material on the page and allowing you to zoom, move things around and all that, and to take notes fast is a challenge. And many other apps don't live up to that challenge. So that's a lot of hard programming. And trying to make it reliable as possible. A lot of testing, a lot of beta testers. A thing that I think could be better, and one of the other things you have to do when you're programming for a product like the iPad is you're also dealing with animation of various sorts to make it smooth. And so it's not just making it fast and also making it easy to learn and appropriate to use, but also making it fit in that metaphor of, things move and things do their things smoothly. And it's a new crafting. Not only do you have to craft the way it looks, you have to craft the way it moves. A challenge for people developing for the iPad and tablets and things like that is that initially what Apple has given us is they've said, program this in our native programming languages, preferably in Objective-C, which for a programmer who wants to work at it, that's fine. It can be very powerful. You can do a lot of things. But what we learned, the initial PCs were programmed like an assembly language. BASIC came in. When BASIC came in, then suddenly people could throw things together much faster and modify it. And that was helpful. Then when Windows came out, you could program it in C, or I guess C++ eventually and stuff. But then they came up with Visual Basic, which made it much easier to put things together and being able to have the VBXs or OCX controls that you could just put things in. And it opened a different class of person. Same thing happened. I hate to use the example, but it's Alpha, of course. I've been using it for years as an example. That you had, programming in like DBase or one of the heavier professional programming systems, or now Access maybe for programming database. But then you had something that was for a person who was very knowledgeable in the area, in the subject area, often the proprietor of the company or something. For them to be able to just get something working, but with enough power. So that's kind of like VB was on Windows, Visual Basic was on Windows and stuff. That type of a development environment with a lot of the power is still something that's married appropriately, which there are certain reasons why it might not be, but there hasn't been a standard one, so that and then also a way of being able to use those and distribute those without all these other problems that Apple has, so that a small business person could just use it themselves, throw together an app just for their business. People are trying to work at that, and there are ways of doing it through the browser, which is something else which we can talk about later, which is what Alpha's doing, which is one way of coming at it. But people also want native apps to craft them natively. And on the Android platforms, we'll probably see more of these systems. I think there's been some that have been shown by Google and others for that. So we're sort of missing that piece. So that what you really need to do now is you have to say, of the hundreds of thousands of apps that are out there, which one best meets my needs for the particular thing I want? And that's okay, except that you may not be able to tailor it as your company's needs change. And so it's sort of missing that. Rather than being able to say, okay, you can build it from scratch yourself without having to be a real programmer, which is the way it is now. So maybe for the consumer market that's appropriate for Apple. For small business and stuff, we're missing something.
Okay, and I am going to go back to that point, what you said earlier about building native applications and small businesses and such. But just real quick, also curious, do you have plans to build this for any other platforms like Android?
I'd love to, but right now I'm spending all my time bringing it up and improving it and changing it in ways that could obsolete whatever I did elsewhere. For the iPad, which is the main platform and where I have a lot of users who are depending on it. I am looking at the other platforms. I have this is a Zoom, a Motorola Zoom, and I'm doing some evaluation to see how hard it's going to be to do a port. But what I'm doing is changing, and I'd like to get it to a more stable position before I move and put it on the Zoom. I mean, I didn't get on, I got on the iPad right away because I was already on the iPhone with something, but it wasn't on the iPhone when it first came out. It took a long time until I came out with it, so it might be the same here.
Okay, and before my next follow-up question about that, I just want to quickly talk about Alpha, and if I have an Alpha 5 application, how can I use Note Taker? Can you give me some examples for our Alpha 5 developers out there?
Well, one thing that I've been hearing a lot from my users is the use of my app for marking up PDFs, for taking a PDF file and either signing something, making marks on plans or something like that, or in some way annotating it, and often then emailing that to somebody else, or doing the annotation with somebody or having them sign it. So there are cases, I'm sure, where you have applications within Alpha where you get the output, produce the output as a PDF. You then be able to pull that, get that as an email, for example, and right from the email you can go into Note Taker HD, and then be able to look at it closely, because you can zoom in very easily, you can circle figures and stuff, and then you can send that off to somebody else, or have them sign it if it's a form or something. If there's a final thing where, let's say that the output, you sit in Alpha, you sit there and you craft all the stuff that you need to craft, and now you have a final proposal, and all you need is to have it signed. You can do right there with a customer, hand it to them, have them sign it, and then print it out.
Yeah, that's definitely a big time saver right there.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump back into this whole idea of there's a lot of mobile platforms out there, there's a lot of applications, and there's a lot of small businesses that want to get a mobile application out there because obviously it's exploding. It's gaining a lot of popularity. And I don't know if you've been reading the Alpha Software blog lately, but we recently talked about the notion of developer burnout. The fact that, right now there's 6 operating systems for mobile platforms, and developers have to build for, one of them or for all of them, and the demands that their clients or organizations put on them to build for these mobile platforms. We fear that they simply might burn out. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think there are too many platforms, and what platforms take priority?
Well,
it's a loaded question.
When we were doing VisiCalc way back when, there was the Apple II, and then there was the Commodore CBM, Commodore Business Machines, 8032, and the PET, and the Atari 800, and Sony had a machine, and IBM came out with a machine, Radio Shack had the Model 1, the Model 2, the Model 3, and we just had to move our app to all that, and this is not a new thing. Think of the poor game writers who have to put all the platforms, and that's one of the reasons why the web became so popular, is that you could write something once, and as long as it was targeted to the browser, and if the browsers were standardized, you could run on a lot of places. There still was the problem there were more than one browser, and you have to handle IE and Firefox or Netscape at the time, and but it was a little more manageable. Mm-hmm. What's happened now is that it used to be users, especially at companies, were given their computer by the IT department, that this is the computer you will use. And you could control it, so you could have a monoculture of sorts, which simplified things. Today, people are mobile, expect to be able to access things, not just sitting at that one shrine on their desk with the thing that was given to them. And the equipment that they use, they often bought themselves, and they determine what they want for other reasons. So you have much less control over that. And and they expect to have it everywhere. On any device, they're supposed to be able to get it. So that's a real challenge. Another challenge is that there's the challenge of each of these different systems have a different way of interacting. The smartphone has a different interaction because it's such a small screen, you can't fit very much on it, than a tablet, than a laptop, than a big screen. I mean, you have a 1024 by 768 laptop, or a netbook, which is even less in some cases, small screen. And then you have your big screens. I'm looking, you have these 24-inch or whatever. And you noticed how, like with Microsoft Word and Office, how they have all these new features, use up more pixels on the screen. They have this huge bar on the top that takes up as many pixels as your entire screen used to be in the old days. They're taking advantage of that. Well, then if you then put that on a smartphone, you only have room for nothing. You can't take that UI and put it. We have touch interfaces which require big buttons as opposed to mouse interfaces that can work with small buttons, but you can use two fingers. So all this is such a challenge for developers because we have all these different possibilities, and people like to have the applications tuned to their particular platform. And that's a real challenge. So what a lot of people do is to say, okay, I will take the most popular ones or the ones that are most important to my particular users, and I'll tune it for those, handcraft it for those. And everything else, I'll at least provide a lowest common denominator. You also have to deal with accessibility issues, which you can also do by having that common denominator that lets you give you full access to everything. You want to have full access to the power, but it might have not as streamlined an interface, but at least it gives you access to it and works on a wide variety of platforms, so that if you're stuck with nothing but a smartphone and you have to be able to place an order, you can do it, even though you don't have your laptop with the big 17-inch display or something like that. So there are some ways around that, but they require understanding each of those platforms. Mm-hmm. So I wrote an essay also a little while back. If you go to Bricklin.com and you look at the writing section, you'll see one about the Developers Challenge in 2011. It basically says some of the same stuff and how to deal with it.
Great. Well, yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. Definitely go check it out for the listeners and the viewers out there. I'm sure it's very insightful because we have a lot of the same views, and I'm sure that you know about the mobile development framework that's coming out in Alpha 5 version 11. I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, but essentially...
enough. I mean, I saw it in operation, and mm-hmm. I saw also what, you guys had written and what you were trying to do after I had written something months before that you had some of the same, which made me feel wonderful. There's somebody else who says I'm not off the wall saying what I'm saying. They feel the same way. And with some of the same, and are approaching some of the same answers that I was suggesting that people do. So yeah, I've seen it in operation. I've seen, some of the interim versions as it's coming together.
Yeah, and essentially for people who aren't familiar with it, it essentially will allow you to build a mobile application once and run it on all mobile operating platforms, but it will behave like a native application. Dan, as a developer, what do you think the implications of this technology will be for developers for the mobile web?
Well, saw when I saw it, remember before I did my iPad app and actually overlapping with it, I've been working with social text with a cloud-based application. Either social text one either works with on an appliance that you have in your company, or you can have it on their servers elsewhere. But it makes heavy use of JavaScript, and my application, the spreadsheet, uses a lot of Java. It's basically all JavaScript to provide a full, powerful spreadsheet running on your browser. So I'm very aware, and I wrote the whole thing. I really understand JavaScript well, and how hard it is to do certain things. And what I saw was that Alpha has decided to bite the bullet and to really work hard to use the features that Apple and others have put in the modern browsers on the mobile devices, the WebKit-based browsers, and take advantage of those extra features that you don't usually see to be able to give effects that feel like those native effects, like the animation I was talking about, to be able to slide things around, which help you keep context, which are very important when you're drilling down and coming back up, to take advantage of that. And to make it, in many cases, look like it was a native app written in Objective-C, using techniques and things in JavaScript that are not for the faint-hearted for writing. In other words, this is not something you would normally write yourself. And a lot of work is going into that. And I was pretty impressed. I mean, I've seen things with it, and I've been playing with that myself, and I know how hard it is to do that, and it's kind of cool to see. There are others that are working on that, and there are libraries that are making it easier, and Alpha's taking advantage of the latest stuff. And it was kind of interesting to see here is a company that goes way back, that seems to have, you're on your PC to do stuff and all, yet it has moved to be really cutting edge JavaScript in terms of what you're able to do on the browser to get effects that are as up to date as possible without having to write any code as a user. It's that same feeling that you got years ago about Alpha on the PC world, but now in this new day. And, how long they'll keep it up, I don't know, but, they've been able to hit the sweet spot today in a way that's really encouraging, and they did it yet again. So that was kind of cool. I was very surprised. I did not expect it to be that far. I was, ready to say, hey, here's some things I think you should do. And instead they said, here's what we've done that is what you would have said except polished more. So, I hate to sound so, fawning over and all that, but I really was pleasantly surprised about that stuff. And I had written this thing months before that this fit with, and it was like, whoa, and I hadn't been talking to them about it, so maybe they read my stuff. I don't know. It's so that I think bodes well, or at least for those classes of very popular systems that you can find all over the place. I mean, if worse comes to worse, you could buy an iPod Touch to be able to access some of these things. If you need to go Android, that should be able to work. I'm pretty sure they'll be able to make it work on Android too. So, and there are lots of iPads out there. And the good JavaScript, of course, will work on laptops and all. So this is pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the positive feedback, because it's something that we're really excited about at Alpha Software, the mobile development framework coming out, which should hopefully be coming out soon. But it's wonderful.
But wait until it's done, because you don't want it to be nice and solid. That's an important thing. So, the proof of the pudding will be in the eating, but I think they're aiming the right place.
Right, and we'll have to ask Richard and Sullen what they were reading when they were developing that, and see if they were reading.
They've been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I've known them both for many, many years, and and I've learned a lot from them, and hopefully vice versa. So they've lived through the same sequence and evolution of the industry, the ups and the downs and the cycles. So they have some of the same background that I was drawing on when I wrote what I wrote. And they use that, so they're coming from a lot of the similar experiences, and we're building on that. I mean, we're graybeards. Well, those of us who have beards. That comes, there's a lot of experience there, but we're staying up with the latest stuff. Some people like to stay where they were, but others like to keep doing the latest stuff, and that seems to be where they go. They see the market seems to like that, and they get joy out of it. So I'm not that surprised.
All right.
It doesn't matter whether we had actually spoken or not.
I know. Well, I want to switch gears just a little bit and pick your brain about another hot topic we've been talking about on the blog recently, which is a lot of the problems we're seeing with web-based development tools. Recently DabbleDB went under, and other web-based dev tools like Caspio, QuickBase, and Zoho were trying to lure them to their platforms. And obviously, we were doing the same. We were trying to get those developers to come to Alpha 5 because we think, obviously, our platform's better. But, here's the problem with these tools that we believe, your data's migratable, but your business logic isn't. So, on the other hand, Alpha's worldview is that you build on the desktop and deploy your app everywhere. So what's your view on these cloud-based development tools? What do you see as the upsides and the downsides as well?
Well, let's see. You got to remember that I did a cloud-based and a server and a PC-based tool. I wrote this. My company Trellix from the 90s, which was in the mid to late 90s and the early 2000s. We first built an app that ran on the PC. We made it into a thing we call Trellix Web that would output HTML and load it up onto a website and be able to have it there. It was for producing websites. And I still use it to do my blog and my website. Mm-hmm. Not for the NoteTaker HD website. That's done by hand and with another tool that I did called ListGuard. But for RSS feeds. But for my blog and my main site, I still use it. Mm-hmm. We also did an app. We did a cloud service called Trellix Web Express, which I believe is still being used by the companies that bought our companies, whatever. It's still out there. But initially it was on Tripod and it was on CNET and some of those are not running it anymore. Those companies don't exist anymore. Yeah. And the cloud-based one, you're depending on the company still being around. Something like Intuit or something, I can see them being around as long as they still believe in the app or it goes where you want it to go. So the cloud-based has its advantages that you can get upgrades by them automatically doing it and stuff. But as a small business person, I remember there is this thing of wanting to have control. Mm-hmm. And not moving when you don't want to move. Because, the classic example, and I heard of one just last week, this Friday, person had it, where they were using PowerPoint or something and about to do a presentation. It was an all-day presentation, and they turned on the machine, and it said, we're shutting down to do an upgrade. We're rebooting because there's a new version of the OS of something or other that you have to do. Please wait. And there went 5 minutes of the presentation while the system rebooted and restarted. There's that thing of, suddenly it's been upgraded and your stuff may or may not work the way you wanted it to. That's great for people who can tolerate that. And in many cases, with training and stuff, that's okay. With Gmail upgrades a bit, that's okay. People can deal with it. But if you're running your business and you want to be able to time when things happen, that may not be appropriate. Mm-hmm. So in that case, having your own in control has its advantages. Knowing that you can have it work for many years, that you can go back and do something. We'll do a promotion like we used to do. I can just run the old one. I'll pull up an old PC that still has Windows 98 or something and be able to, or whatever. I don't know. There are advantages and disadvantages to each. Mm-hmm. And the fact that the delivery in Alpha has moved to where you can access through the web. In the my old days, you had to be on the same computer. I did the thing, and then I handed the computer to Jennifer, and she sat there and she would use it. Then eventually you could use it on a LAN, but you had to be on the LAN. But now you can do it all through servers and stuff like that. That flexibility has been important. So you sort of have to decide as a business person what fits best for you. There's there is some help. There is something nice knowing that you always have a backup. The internet goes down. At least you can, if you have to, you can sit on telephone and sit on one computer perhaps and be able to access your data. But on the other hand, then you have to have access to normally have access to the internet and stuff. So you really have to decide on your own. And I think Alpha fills an important niche, big niche that's important. And for many companies may be the way to go. As a small business person, I can understand it viscerally about that. There's something about having that complete control and having a history of it being maintained and updated and upgraded and stuff over the last it's been 25 years, something like.
Yeah, 26, I think.
26 years. Yeah, that's that's pretty good. I don't think some of those others have, and also I think I like the fact that they're so aimed at that particular size of application. Mm-hmm. The thing about a small business person that I remember reading in a book by Amar Bedi, who's a professor now in Tufts business. He did a lot of research about small businesses, and he said, some people, big business people, seem to think of small businesses as a little business, and they're like little munchkins, and so big business has these really good stuff, and small business has this crappy little stuff. Well, that's not the way a small business person sees themselves. They see themselves as just as good as the big guy, maybe better, more nimble. And when we did a lot of research at Trellix, I sat behind the one-way mirror and watched these guys talk and all that. They didn't say, well, the big business should have really good-looking stuff, and I'm a small business, so I'll have crappy-looking stuff because, I'm small, I don't need as good. They wanted it to look just as good. When they paint their truck, they want the lettering to look just as good. They want they'll pay extra money to make sure that their logo looks good. Now, it may be that we think it's garish, but that's or something like that. But that's an aesthetic call about it. But they're very happy and proud of it. And it's often better. As a small businessman behind me, that thing up there is a design show for my stationery system. The guys who designed my stationery years ago won an award for how good it was. And the same people who did stuff for Lopan Express or something, they're paid money as a small businessman to just as good people to do this stuff. So that small business people will expect to be able to have map-based, geo something or other. They expect to have pictures and do stuff. The things that you see in Alpha, which every time, wow, look how far they're going. They want to be able to get the first class stuff. If it's cool, and others are using it, they expect to be able to use it too. They may not, but they often do. In fact, that's one of the fun of being a small business is you can dabble in all of these things and use all that stuff. And Alpha at least understands that, and that you do need at times depth. You can't say, oh, you're a small business, we'll give you the 80% solution, and only the big business needs to craft all the little details of these things. Well, actually, in many cases, the small business's advantage is, in one particular case, they heavily crafted something that they're really good at. They're the experts at being able to do the 50 different varieties of something that the big businesses decided they're only doing the 3. But they need a system that can handle that. So therefore they have to build their system to handle this special case. And which is why a lot of the one-size-fits-all that you often see in cloud-based things for training purposes and to make it easy, this issue that I had with making an iPad app, that they have different constraints, that Alpha is going after a different area and a different part of the market. And you don't have to, as you just said, not just, since I talk so long, you continue to use that business logic you started with and then do the crafting later on. You don't have to go from another system to do that.
Right. Well, thank you for your insight and your perspective on that, because it's nice to get, obviously people know what our perspective is at Alpha Software, so it's good to get someone outside of our box, to tell us that a little bit different about, the web-based dev tools. But before, we sign off and say our goodbyes, since I know you have your iPad right next to you, I'm curious, what's on Dan Bricklin's iPad? What apps do you have besides Note-Taker?
I have all of the major, ink apps I have to go take a look at them and see them. The main apps that I use, because I use this for me,
right.
Obviously the browser that comes with it is something that's important to me because I do a lot of reading on this. This is what I sit with during lunch and stuff like that. When we're traveling and we have to say, let's go find, we're going to go to so-and-so, such and such a place, are there tickets available? Let's go look at their website. Let's go. So using it for browsing for Safari is important. And of course the Maps application similarly is important. Though, that's only when a Copilot there. But what I learned about the Maps application is that if we go to the map, let's see, where's Maps? So here we have Maps, and where is this? Who knows? And if let's see, bring it up here. Here we go. If I was sitting here between the two of us, we could look at this together, and we can, I can do my zooming, and you can touch it, and you see me accessing, as opposed to if I had a laptop, I'm going, and you're not part of it. It's a very social device, which is another thing about if you're using it with a customer. It's much more. You can look at presentations and explain to them and say, here's our stuff. If you're filling out a form, they can watch you filling out the form or searching for stuff. So the Maps one is a great one, and using it that way. I also use Twitter. I use Twitter a lot with that. That's how I keep up between Safari and Twitter. Photos, for showing photos when I run into people. Those are the main, the main ones I use. Reading, I read on this. I read books, Kindle, and this for doing reading. I use my app, obviously, for note-taking.
I would hope so.
I hope so, too. Well, when I'm in a situation where I need to take notes.
Right.
At conferences and stuff like that. And now with the iPad, too, we can take a picture, and I can embed the picture in my latest version. You can embed the picture, and you can annotate it and stuff. But you can mark it up. So I use some of the basic ones. Of course, I have a few games, play games sometimes with it, and I'll probably use it for some more. But the thing is, I have so many iPads here, different. Right here I have 4 sitting here. Why do I have so many of them? Well, I need an iPad too, and I need a white one to be able to see how the new stuff will look on it and to test, because until you test, you don't know if it'll work.
Right.
And then I had one which I could put new versions of the operating system on, because when Apple gives you that, you have to dedicate pretty much a machine to it. Otherwise, you could have problems. If it's not working, you lose your iPad. And then I have one that has the old version of the OS, the 3.2 version, and then I have another one that I usually keep the latest, the common version, the one that's there, so I can compare this one to that one. Then, of course, my people who help me, designers and stuff. I have a graphic designer who helps me with the look and all. and I had to get her one, and then I had a graphic designer slash programmer who designed these shapes that I have, and of course I had to get him one so he could be able to do the work for me. So plus I got one for my mom, but so lots of these, and I forget which app is which one, depends on, I have, on my iPhone, I have all sorts of other type of apps that are reference apps that I might need, certain books and stuff like that I need access to.
All right, well, great. Well, Dan, it was a pleasure speaking with you today. Is there anything that you're working on right now that we can look forward to in the near future?
Yeah, improving note-taker HD. Obviously, I'm adding new features to it and improving it in ways that the users have been asking for, and that's keeping me very, very busy.
All right, well, great. Well, this, again, was Dan Bricklin, the creator of VisiCalc, and most recently, the creator of NoteTaker HD. But before we sign off, Dan, tell everyone again where they can buy your app and find out more about it, and yourself again.
Okay, well, to buy it, you have to have an iPad, and you have to, you go to the App Store, which you can do on your iPad, and search for NoteTaker HD, that's NOTE space TAKER space HD, or you can learn about it by going to notetakerhd.com, no spaces, and for more about me, you can go to bricklin.com, BRICKLIN.com, and that's pretty much it. And if you like the app, if you use it and like it, please tell others, because that's how things work. It's you show your friends, and hopefully they tell others. It's not always as good as this when I show Richard and Selwyn, and they said, we can tell others through this other way, which I appreciate very much.
All right, yeah, and we'll make sure to include all those links in the blog post as well. All right, Dan, thank you so much, and take care.
You too.